petrodollar agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia has reportedly ended. So it was a 50-year agreement signed June 8th of 1974 with no reports of it being renewed, meaning as of June 9th, it's expired as far as we understand. Now, the reports began circulating yesterday, but then those reports were backpedaled when people claimed that they came from an unverified source, which was a Twitter account called BRICS News, which is apparently notorious for posting some things that aren't accurate. And they posted about this petrodollar deal not being renewed on June 12th. So it was a little confusing about what was really going on. Was this renewed? Was it not? But then we found this article from NASDAQ.com that was actually dated June 11th, reporting that the agreement had in fact ended after 50 years. So what is the petrodollar? Why did Saudi Arabia choose not to renew it? And what's going to happen now? Well, the petrodollar is the nickname given to dollars earned from oil exporting nations selling their oil. So this whole system started in 1974 when oil prices shot up and Saudi Arabia made a deal with the US to sell oil exclusively in US dollars. Now, this created a constant need for dollars worldwide because everybody needs oil. And to buy oil at that point, you needed dollars. So this agreement with Saudi Arabia boosted the dollar's value and it solidified its place as the top currency globally. So it is the world's reserve currency, much because of this petrodollar. Now, without the agreement, Saudi Arabia is now free to trade oil in whatever currency it wants. And this makes it easier for other countries, especially the sanctioned ones, to purchase oil in a currency that they have more access to. So either their own currency, like in the case of China and India, potentially Russia, or the currency of a country not sanctioning them. So if you're Venezuela or if you're Syria or Iran, you might grab yourself some Chinese yuan or you might grab yourself some Russian rubles, and you might be able to then buy some oil from Saudi Arabia. I guess Venezuela shouldn't have to, right? Now, why did Saudi Arabia choose not to renew it? Probably for a variety of reasons. An obvious one is the changing global economy, especially with China rising as a major power. Saudi Arabia probably wants to diversify its economic partners and lessen its dependence on the US economy. Now, by trading oil in currencies like the Chinese yuan, Saudi Arabia could build stronger ties with China, which has 5 times the people, more need for oil. U.S. sanctions is probably another big reason. The U.S. loves to use sanctions to try and hobble economies. The U.S. increasingly talks about sanctioning China, which if it's becoming the largest economy in the world with 5 times the people and 5 times the need for oil, why would Saudi Arabia want to limit how much money it can make by essentially limiting China's access because China can't get a hold of the dollars, right? So back in the 70s when Saudi Arabia made the petrodollar deal, the U.S. wasn't using sanctions as a weapon. But now, as the U.S. has increasingly used the dollar as a form of warfare, you can imagine that Saudi Arabia sits there and wonders why in the world they're only accepting one method of payment that the world is increasingly being cut off from, right? Now, of course, Saudi Arabia didn't just sell oil for dollars for nothing. They got something out of the deal. So what are they giving up by allowing this deal to expire? Well, the deal in 1974 guaranteed Saudi Arabia's security from their surrounding neighbors. We basically agreed to a defense pact. We also agreed to continue legitimizing the monarchy, keeping the Saudi family in power, no matter the moral criticism against them, no matter the fact that monarchies have lost their favor in the world. We've decided to continue legitimizing them and dealing with them. And they, of course, then gained access to tons of dollars, which were incredibly valuable and stable. They still are, to help them build their economy and develop their country. So what's going to happen now? That's the big question. Now that this deal looks like it's done, we could be staring down the barrel of a seismic shift in the global economic order. If the petrodollar system collapses, the US dollar might lose its status as the world's primary reserve currency. This would mean less global demand for dollars, leading to a significant drop in its value. So picture this: higher inflation with less global demand for the US dollar, its value would decrease. A weaker dollar means imports become more expensive, driving up prices and leading to inflation, which none of us want. Skyrocketing interest rates to combat inflation and attract buyers for U.S. debt. The Federal Reserve might raise interest rates. Higher interest rates would increase borrowing costs for consumers and businesses. And the collapse of the petrodollar could lead to an increased struggle for the U.S. to finance its debt. With the dollar's diminished status, fewer countries would buy U.S. Treasury bonds. The US would need to offer higher interest rates to attract buyers, making it more expensive to finance its debt. Basically, it's a nightmare scenario for us. So if this is so bad, then why are we not hearing about this all over the mainstream media? Well, because even though it's a well-documented agreement, the mainstream media has treated it sort of like a conspiracy theory, meaning the petrodollar has been blamed for numerous wars and poor foreign policy decisions very rightfully. And of course, to combat this, the mainstream media did what it always does, which is downplay it as a conspiracy theory. Not to mention, they probably assume the banks will work it out. You don't have to worry your pretty little head. They're going to be rolling out CBDCs soon, don't you know? Something like that. Plus, there's a possibility the two governments are still working out a new agreement. They have been in negotiations lately about some sort of another security pact that Biden wants to offer Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is probably asking for a lot of different things this time around, and the U.S. is asking for other things. For example, like normalization with Israel as part of the deal, possibly. So they could be just working it out. Also, the government sends directives to mainstream media, so they probably told them to keep quiet. We don't want the world knowing the dollar is about to become a lot less desirable. Shh. Just some guesses. Maybe the nightmare scenario will happen. Maybe it won't. A lot of it depends on how the world reacts. And since there's a stable currency, or since there isn't a stable enough currency at the moment to replace the dollar, the government might not see an urgent need to renew the deal. So that could be, look, it's not going to collapse overnight if they just get rid of this deal. It's still going to take a decade or two before we start to, I say that I should knock on wood. I've been wrong so many times when it comes to doomsday scenarios. I'm naturally optimistic. A fault, I suppose, or a positive. I don't know, however you want to look at it. I like to think it's positive that I'm so positive. So I tend to think that, the doomsday scenarios are not going to happen. I thought this with COVID when people were emailing me saying, Kim, mandates are coming. They're talking about vaccines. Mandates are coming. And I thought, no way, not in America. No way, no lockdowns. No mandates, not in America. It's just not going to happen. I can't see my fellow Americans going for it. And I was wrong, so wrong on that. I would think that we're not going to see a new reserve currency rising for probably another 8 to 10 years at minimum, but I could totally be wrong on that. The world is moving fast. Things move way faster nowadays than they did 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, certainly 40 or 50 years ago. Things are moving much quicker now with the digital age. So it could be that countries band together a lot faster and strengthen a different currency quicker. And even just the smallest amount of a dent going into the reserve currency. So let's say the United States dollar is still the reserve currency mostly. So instead of 100% world currency, we drop down to 70% world currency, reserve currency, because there's another currency that people are starting to take up, or even 25% or even 10%. We're going to feel that as Americans unless these banks start doing a bunch of other crap that they really shouldn't be doing to try to, prevent the too big to fail scenario. But once we start getting to a 30% dent by another reserve currency, we will absolutely feel it. And if it gets to 40% or 50% or worse, more than 50%, then we absolutely will feel it. But we will feel it when there's another reserve currency that's at least 25 to 30% of the world reserve. That's going to be a wake up call for America, and we will have to have a different strategy. At the end of the day, it's in Saudi Arabia's best interest as a country to open up their reserve currency, open up the deal to a bunch of other reserve currencies, because they could see the writing on the wall. The United States is using all these sanctions. Other countries are getting together. You've got BRICS rising up together. You've got so in Saudi Arabia is looking at this and thinking, we don't want to just accept one form of payment. We've got to have more than one form of payment available. From the United States perspective, our leaders are so stupid. Had they just left the dollar unpoliticized and just stopped using it for sanctioning and just said, that's a whole different thing than our political realm, our foreign policy realm. That's monetary. That has nothing to do with politics or foreign policy. We wouldn't be in this situation. I think the world would be fine using US dollars as the reserve currency forever, indefinitely, so as long as it wasn't somehow weaponized. But it's been weaponized, and here we are now, a bunch of countries, large countries, Russia and China, major countries, saying, you guys cannot be trusted to be the custodians of the world reserve currency. we got to make change. And Saudi Arabia sees the writing on the wall and says, yeah, I mean, China's 3 times our size. I mean, what are we going to do? So that's that. It does look like it has so far been expired, but yet to be seen. We don't know if the two countries are talking and if they're going to come up with some other agreement. If I were Saudi Arabia, I'd be asking for a lot. And that's not good for us. But it is what it is. We have just really, really idiotic leadership in this country, unfortunately. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you could catch just by heading to that link down below, KimIversonShow.com. You can watch the full show from what you just watched, or you could catch the full show live Monday through Friday, live streams, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you then. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Never miss an episode. Never miss a clip. Never miss a segment. Thanks, guys.